Welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, we're going to talk about some visitors coming into Norman for the spring game. Whatever time the game's going to happen, they're at least going to be there to enjoy it. Look at what these guys are going to be potentially in the 2024 season. And hopefully, we land some of these transfers and we'll talk about some recruits as well. Before we get into all of that, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, follow us on all social media. Everything is linked down below. And if you prefer to listen to these podcasts, Spotify and Apple Music, we're on there as well. Go follow us there. Turns on all the downloads so that as soon as we post, they get downloaded into your library. All right, but we're gonna start with some transfers here. A very active portal. It opened up on Tuesday, I believe, and you've already seen a ton of defensive linemen, and Oklahoma is really pursuing a few of them. We're going to start with the Big 12 transfer, Dominic Williams out of TCU, transferring in his third year. He was honorable mention last year as a 2023 Defensive Lineman of the Year and the Big 12 team overall, and I believe he was a freshman All-American. That might have been our honorable mention as well, but a mention is better than no mention at all. So, pretty good player. Brandon, I know he's got some statistics to share with us, but Dominic would be a major presence listed at, I believe, 6'3", 320. Large human being. Definitely someone that has been productive at TCU. Was part of the team when they did make the run to the national championship, so he knows what it took to get there while he was just a freshman. You can pull from that experience and hopefully help lead the locker room going into a situation like Oklahoma, if you were to commit there, that I think is looking for someone to motivate that team, especially the defensive line, who's a pretty young unit in themselves.
Well, first, I missed 90% of that season that TCU did that title run, and just hearing you say that, I know it happened. I saw the title game, but just hearing that sentence still, it still sounds weird to me that TCU made a title run as recently as they did, but they did. Just doesn't feel real. But Dominic Williams is, as you mentioned, a large human being. I think he would bring a lot of at least depth right away to that defensive line room. It would be a huge get for Oklahoma. He's huge, but yeah, statistically, he's improved every single season. As a freshman, 27 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 4.5 for loss. And then as a sophomore, he had like 33, 34 tackles, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. So I think next year, wherever he ends up playing, he's due for 6 sacks because he appears to double that number every single season. So 6 and then 12 as a senior. So, I mean, that's obviously going to be really, really good. There's a lot to like here. Even if he doesn't start right away, he's a guy that's definitely going to see the field. He's seen the field in every game since he's been at TCU, so he's very experienced. You mentioned he has that championship pedigree. He knows what it takes to get it done, at least in the college football playoff to get to the title game. He would bring a lot to this team. Let's hope it all works out. I wish the spring game weather was a little more cooperative for us, but it is what it is. I'm sure it'll still be a good experience. I'm excited.
And fun fact, at TCU, his defensive line coach, I just looked it up because for someone that was productive at his first school, you would assume they'd find a way, even if it was an NIL situation, they'd find a way to get him what maybe close to what he asked for, what he wanted exactly. But his defensive line coach was Jamarcus McFarland. He is actually a graduate of the University of Oklahoma. Was the graduate assistant here in 2016 through 2018. So maybe Jamarcus put in a good word.
Yeah, good find
for the Sooners. Yeah,
you found a couple good nuggets there for Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, has ties in a way to Oklahoma already. If you want to make that kind of a stretch, to link things together, but I think just even if that you think that's silly, and it is, Todd Bates has been doing a hell of a job at trying to build this offensive line group back to prominence, what it was in the 2000s under earlier years of Bob Stoops. And hopefully a guy like Dominic can help lead the way there, especially again with a young defensive lineman, especially in the interior. Having a guy like that for 2 years, hopefully to help lead that unit wouldn't be the worst thing that you can imagine
Not at all.
for that
It wouldn't
position.
suck now. He has a ton of visits lined up, so his services are obviously highly touted. But from everything we're seeing on Twitter and stuff, and you take that for what it is. But it appears as Oklahoma and Texas are the leader in the clubhouse at the moment. So hopefully, in an ideal world, he sees the spring game, sees the environment, and just kind of shuts it down there. But we'll see.
Yep, and you mentioned his upcoming visit. So he's starting at Oklahoma this weekend. He'll be there from the 20th to the 21st. Then he'll be taking a stop at Texas from the 23rd to the 24th. Then flying up to Colorado. They're really trying to get those Louis V bags up and going again, because they did lose quite a bit of people over the last few days. But he'll be at Colorado from the 26th to 27th, LSU April 30th and May 1st. And he might be going to Missouri and Oregon, but who knows? Maybe he's made a decision at that point. Hopefully, he doesn't even take any of the visits after Oklahoma, but you can't bet on that always, especially with transfers.
I feel like with it being so close together too, with his visit with us and then going to Texas, I feel like he'll definitely at least make those two. But we'll see. With Colorado, doesn't he have to he has to talk to Shadur or something, or
he has to talk to Shiloh.
Shiloh, yeah, I saw that post.
Guy, yeah.
He said defensive guys hit me up, and I guess the offensive guys hit up Shadur, which I guess that makes more sense. But
so
those kids, man, they think they're running the whole country.
Shiloh, at the very least, probably has a job at the University of Colorado in the recruiting department after his football career. But we don't got to talk more about Colorado. I know a lot of people here probably don't like him. So we're going to move on to the next guy. Another defensive lineman, transfer out of Louisville, Germaine Lo. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm going to take Brumbaugh's tendency to mispronounce names since he's been gone for a while. Like I said, transfer out of Louisville. But it's a redshirt senior, so guy that's coming in with, I believe, 1 year of eligibility. He did miss 2022 with a season-ending injury, so I know that was a while ago, but potentially the last year that he's using here. Listed on Louisville's website at 6'3", 310 pounds, another large human being that Oklahoma would definitely like to have in the interior, because as we've talked about in previous videos, that defensive line at the interior position is pretty thin. Now, you do have very talented guys like Jane Jackson and David Stone, Nigel Smith, but outside of them, you've got some older guys that are getting ready to graduate, and really they haven't had much production on the field themselves. So wouldn't be a bad thing to hopefully get both of these guys. But on Germaine, Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, and it would definitely be nice to get both. You take one if you can get one. But Germaine Lo's an interesting case. This is going to be his 6th season of college football, of college in general, whenever 2024 starts. So that's, as you mentioned off recording, this dude could be starting to work on his master's now at this point, which it's pretty crazy. But I guess it's almost common now in college football sometimes with some of these kids. But so he's very experienced. I don't know if you look at his stat sheet, it's pretty interesting. We were talking about it a little before we started, because freshman year he had 3 sacks, sophomore season he had 6.5, and then after that, for whatever reason, I don't follow Arizona State football, I don't follow Louisville football, so I don't know what happened. You mentioned 2022. He missed the season, so I guess that makes sense. Last year he had 1.5 sacks. Maybe that's kind of a recovery year. But if you can get that 2019 version of Germaine Lo, the guy who had 6.5 sacks and 10 for loss at Arizona State, that is extremely productive. That's a guy that's going to push for immediate playing time right away if he can be that version of himself again. And I'm sure he can. This will be the toughest brand of football that he's played in if he does choose Oklahoma as the school, obviously going to the SEC versus the Pac-12 and ACC. So it's gonna be a jump in competition there, but I mean he's gonna be plenty experienced. He's got the size. He's gonna have the coaching staff. Just hopefully, if he does commit, you get that younger version of himself. Maybe he's post injury recovery, post all that stuff, and he can get back to playing at that level.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. He hasn't been as productive in his last couple of seasons, but 2023 was his first one. It looks like he played most of the year, if not all of it. When you look at his profile on ESPN, checking out his game splits, it's kind of tough to to judge our defensive linemen, especially on the interior with statistics. Obviously they need to be productive, but sometimes their biggest impact is just preventing big things from happening without being on the stat sheet. So, like you mentioned, we don't really watch Louisville football, but given that he's someone that is so highly sought after, and Oklahoma's going after him, I think the two big things about these guys right now is we're all excited about them potentially joining this team because they have been productive in their time at the collegiate level. When they were high school students, probably fans would have been complaining. Some fans would have been questioning why they're even getting offers because I believe both these guys were low 3 stars, maybe even
Where,
unranked at some
yeah,
point.
and they weren't
So
initially offered. So, but yeah,
exactly. So this just shows like sometimes it's about the situation that they're being put in, and these two guys work their tails off, and they've proven it on the football field, and now they get an opportunity to go to higher levels of football. Bigger conferences, bigger games become more important when you go to these bigger schools. Now Germaine does as well has a visit schedule lined up. Let me pull it up here. Starting at Oklahoma, then he will be visiting Washington on the 22nd, going to A&M on the 24th, and finishing up with USC. Kind of all over the place. Seems like a weird visit schedule. You'd assume that he'd go from Oklahoma to A&M and then maybe USC and Washington to end up, but I don't envy his travel schedule here for the next week and a half or so because that's a lot of plane rides and a lot of hours on him. But obviously, he's going to go through his process, and Oklahoma gets the first swing of the bat here. Similar to Dominic, hopefully this is one where he's not taking any more visits after this first one because
that's the plan every time, right?
yeah, and I think getting the first one for transfers is more impactful than it is for high school students. High school recruits typically the last visit means the last visit on their schedule kind of hints at the fact that they're the leader because it's best for last kind of mentality. While with transfers, they have less time to go through this process. They need to move a little bit faster. They need to start enrolling into summer classes so they can get into spring ball, get to wherever they're going next. So I would not be surprised, even if for like Dominic, if he stops after Texas and makes a decision between OU and Texas, and for Germaine, if he stops after Washington and it's between Oklahoma and Washington. I think he at least makes it to A&M just because it is A&M, and NIL situation wise, more than likely going to be his best, if we're being honest. But what's going to put him in the best position to make more money after football? We'd like to think it's Oklahoma, but it's different for everyone.
It's definitely not Texas A&M. It's definitely not Texas A&M.
I guess it's a new regime, but they haven't really proven at any point that it would be Texas A&M.
Yeah, but the guy they hired, he's a defensive minded guy. Never mind. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but moving on to the next guy. So we're going from transfers to high school recruits. 2025 4-star defensive lineman, and if you look on 247, he is for some reason listed as a wide receiver. He's a defensive lineman / outside linebacker, 4-star in his class. He's visited Oklahoma multiple times. We've talked about him multiple times. I think it's great that he's getting back on campus, especially for the spring game because it is an environment. I think regardless of what the weather out is going to be, unless it gets to a point where it's dangerous, there's going to be a ton of fans there, so they get a little glimpse of what a game day in Norman is going to look like for them.
Yeah, for sure. This dude is a very, very athletic defensive end. He's got the good size, 6'2", 220, but he's a track kid. He does the 110-meter hurdles, 300-meter hurdles, and the 4x400 relay. So he does some running, does the shot put. He's a high jumper too. I mean, he's an athletic kid. He does have some clips playing receiver too here as well. So he's athletic. He can kind of do it all. I think at the next level, he'll have to tone it in a little more if he's going to strictly play defensive end, which I assume would be the plan. Maybe add a couple pounds there, but I mean, he's got it all. He's got the athleticism. He's currently crystal ball to us, which doesn't suck. See how it goes, man. Hopefully he enjoys his visit. I assume he will. That spring game, I think the Oklahoma spring game was up there with anybody in the country. We definitely show up for that. People like to make fun of us for talking about how much we care about the spring game, how much we show out to that. I mean, other fan bases and stuff like to poke fun at us, but I think it's an awesome thing.
I agree. And for Max, like you mentioned, him being best crystal ball to Oklahoma, it seems like Oklahoma's still holding on to the perceived lead there. And a potential future teammate of his, Trent Wilson, will also be in Norman. He announced on Twitter earlier this week he's going to make the trip to the spring game. You know, getting in Max's ear now wouldn't be a bad thing if he does. If Max is, on his own already leaning towards Oklahoma, starting to foster that friendship between those two won't hurt. And maybe he makes a decision in early summertime. I mean, I know he has his official visits lined up already, which I can start reading those off. So he'll actually be at Penn State to kick off his summer, May 31st. Then he'll be at Baylor before then on April 26th. So he's got his first official coming up here soon, and then A&M on the June 13th, and Oklahoma to end it on June 21st. So example there, high school kids, you can kind of tell where they're leaning because of where their last visit is. That being Oklahoma in this case. Big, I think you go in with a lot of confidence for someone that follows recruiting or covers recruiting with Max Granville. But does he make a commitment now? Probably not. But you can hope. Maybe he decides it's home, and it's not like it's unheard of. I mean, Trent, I don't think he was expected to make that decision when he did, and now he's part of this recruiting class. So we'll see what happens with Max.
Yeah.
All right, last and final guy to talk about here, Kevin Ford Jr., 2026 5-star from Duncanville, Texas, number 1 player in the state of Texas in the 2026 class, defensive lineman, all defensive linemen today. Big visitor here. I believe this might be his first time here. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. If he's been before, it's only been once. As a defensive lineman and someone that's highly ranked, playing at a big time program in the state of Texas, you know that he's being recruited by everyone. I would assume if you're looking at just from the outside, the biggest competition here for Oklahoma is going to be both the University of Texas and Texas A&M. He's probably going to be wanting to stay closer to home. Those two are going to be probably best bet there. Oklahoma's going to be the next one up. I think Oklahoma can make some noise here, given that they have so many defensive linemen coming in. They do have a ton of visitors. Brandon, what do you think about Kevin? I mean, we've got a minute till he makes any sort of decision, but this kind of puts Oklahoma in a position where this could get competitive between, the Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M down the stretch when his recruitment really starts to heat up.
Yeah, this is going to be, like you said, it's going to take a while to figure out. This kid's going to have offers from everywhere in the country when it's all said and done. He's going to be a very high 5-star. Anytime you're the number 1 player in the state of Texas, Texas is very, very good at high school football. So being ranked the best in the state for your class is very high praise. He already holds offers from a lot of schools there. I mean, Arizona State, Baylor, Houston, Miami, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Penn State, SMU, Texas, A&M, USC. I mean, the list it goes on. It's going to be the Alabamas are going to be involved here. Georgia's going to be involved. You name it. They're going to be vying for his services. So it's going to be a dogfight here. He's 6'3", 225 right now as, a sophomore in high school. So he's going to be 250-ish by the time he's done, or wherever they need him to be. It's gonna take some time. The kid's good, but Duncanville to Norman is only a 3-hour drive. Just Googled it. So, I mean, the proximity thing, although we're not in the same state, 3 hours isn't bad. I mean, that's still something you can do any weekend that you can if you want to get back home and see, your family and friends. It's not like he's moving across the country here. So I think Oklahoma's going to be in this fight. We've got the coaches to get it done. Hopefully we can get it done.
Yeah, pretty close to Oklahoma South there, and aka the North Dallas region. The thing with Duncanville is the University of Texas has a pretty good connection there. I mean, they have Colin Simmons, an ex-teammate of Kevin Ford. LSU might be a player here when we get further into his recruitment because they have another teammate of his in Kate Durham. So, there's going to be a lot of competition. It's a 5-star defensive lineman, so that's really without question. But can Oklahoma really make a push here? I think the biggest, again, being from Duncanville, Personally, at this moment, I don't think the odds are super high, but when you get further into the recruitment, that's really when you're going to know, hey, can we be super competitive here? Is Texas going to continue to just dominate getting kids from Duncanville High School? Hopefully not in this case, but it wouldn't surprise me either.
And by the time this kid's making his decision, he's class of 2026. We're still, at least a year out probably before he decides. Colin Simmons might be transferring at that point. You never know in the world of college football now. It's no lock that he'll be at Texas.
That's true. That's a good point. That kind of stuff happens all the time. But a lot of visitors. Obviously, we only covered 4 here. I think it's going to be like upwards of 60 recruits and transfers there for the spring game. Hopefully, it goes off without a hitch. I know the weather is becoming a real issue for when the game is going to kick off, but it sounded like it was confirmed earlier that it will be 100% going to be on Saturday. Yeah. Just don't know the start time yet. So fingers crossed it stays at the same time.
We might end up getting a primetime spring game, which take that for what it is. It might be cool. It might not be very cool, but either way, be there, be loud, dress warm. I wish the weather was more cooperative. I mean, I'm going to be there, so I wish it was a perfect 75 and sunny day, but that's not the cards we're dealt. Either way, you got to be there, support. I think it means a lot. We'll see. Just get it done.
100%. Is that the end of video challenge?
I guess. Are you going to the spring game?
All right.
I don't have anything better for you today.
There it is. Then make sure to tell us, are you going to the spring game in the comment section? Let us know what you think about these transfers, these recruits, who else you're excited about visiting Norman for this weekend. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, follow us on all social media, follow us on Spotify and Apple Music, and tell us what you think we should talk about next week. We're coming up with more ideas. We're starting to line up some interviews for you guys in the future. I know that's one thing.
Pushing for interviews on a lot of guys, I think, right now.
Yeah, and I think they're going to start coming together, but that's one thing that someone mentioned in the comment section last time. So we do look at this feedback. We're trying to take it and run with it. So we appreciate everything you guys do when it comes to watching and commenting and telling us your thoughts. So keep doing it, and we will see you next time.